Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of What's Important Now from the United States Border Patrol Academy, the podcast where we talk about what's important to you, the Border Patrol agents, men and women out in the field, your families, and those that we serve. Here today with us we have Chief Rich Fortunato. Now, Chief Fortunato is actually the Deputy Directorate Chief of the Mission Readiness Operations Directorate. Rich, good to have you.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for having me. Look forward to it.
Now, this is a kind of an interesting topic that I want to talk about because many people, when they think of the United States Border Patrol, they think of the men and women in uniform out there on the line, on patrol, on the front line of law enforcement and keeping this country safe, as they should. Not a lot of thought, or at least not enough thought, goes into the men and women behind the scenes that support that mission and keep it where we're able to do what we do every day out in the field, and that's where you come in.
Yeah, that's where I come in. It's actually a pretty big machine that helps drive that 19,555 agents out there doing the stuff that they do. A lot of work goes into, got to make sure they have the vehicles and the facilities and all the equipment that goes out there. So that's what our directorate takes care of, is all of the manpower and administrative functions to make sure our agents and employees can get the job done.
So, and what's the old saying, amateurs think tactics, experts think logistics? So we wouldn't be able to go out there and do the job that we do every single day. We wouldn't have vehicles to drive. We wouldn't have gas to put in those vehicles. We wouldn't have the equipment that we need, the technology that we need. We wouldn't be able to procure the infrastructure that we need on the border, all these force multipliers that make our job easier and safer. We wouldn't be able to get the contracts that we need, to get the support from folks, from vendors. All of that falls under the purview of mission readiness operations and the professional staff, the non-uniform men and women that do this job each and every day. Tell us a little bit about what does it take to be a member of that part of our family?
Well, it even goes a little bit different than that. One thing you didn't mention, which is the big important part, is uniforms. It's another thing that falls in. That's a contract that goes through with CBP and we work. So that there's that whole group of thing. Mission Support Operations Directorate Headquarters is based out of, is basically 7 divisions. And those 7 divisions are split into 2 sides of the portfolio. We have an executive director. Right now, the acting executive director is Lisa Geddes. And then we have 2 portfolios of a portfolio that I'm over as the deputy chief, which is the agent support division, the recruitment and training division, the logistics division, and the facilities division. And then acting director Michael Rosemont, acting executive director, our deputy executive director is Michael Rosemont, and he has the workforce management, the programming, which is the RAP cycle, the 5-year out budget stuff, and then the finance stuff, the folks that take care of all of our money stuff that comes through. So it's a team of about 190 people at headquarters that are doing all those functions that take care of the things that the field needs.
And then from there, you go down to the sector level. Again, for those of you that don't know, the Border Patrol divides the country up into sectors. And so you have 20 geographic areas, sectors, plus you have the Special Operations Group, and you also have the U.S. Border Patrol Academy, plus the headquarters element. But those really 21 sectors, if you include SOG, also have their version of Mission Readiness Operations divisions that are a tier below the headquarters element but do much the same thing.
Yeah, they actually handle a lot of that stuff there, and our folks work hand in hand with those folks. Our facilities guys work hand in hand with BPAM on the CBP side, and also with the facilities folks at the local sectors to handle any of those issues at the station or at the sector level. The same thing, our folks work with your vehicle folks to make sure that you've got the fuel in the tanks to run those things, to get fuel in the vehicles. We have some uniform people that handle the uniform things. We also have the special unity stuff like the chaplaincy, the peer support, the resiliency, the honor guard. All of that stuff is handled within the Mission Operations Directorate. Your firearms stuff, your firearms training, your ammunition, your soft body armor, all that stuff is handled within the divisions at the MROD.
And it kind of goes without saying, most people don't think about the fact that there are folks that aren't in uniform that take care of that are these subject matter experts for those areas each and every day. And to give you kind of an idea of the immensity or the enormity of it, the Border Patrol is a mobile force. We do everything on patrol. So we have a large fleet. How big is our fleet?
Oh, last check, a fleet just in marked vehicles only, we were somewhere in the neighborhood of roughly 8,000 vehicles for the 15,000 or so that are actually doing the patrol work.
And those are distributed out to the various sectors. So you're talking about in the thousands of vehicles that just are marked units alone with that it takes to go out and do this job for the entirety of our southern border, our northern border, our coastal borders, for nearly 20,000 men and women to go out on patrol every single day. The logistics of maintaining a fleet that size when you're talking about the preventative maintenance, oil changes, you're talking about flat tires. So within that same directorate and those divisions, we have a fleet of mechanics that also are dedicated to nothing but keeping that fleet mobile and up and running.
Exactly. We have fleet mechanics that take care of some of that stuff. We also have logistics folks that are taking care of ordering all the parts necessary to do that stuff. Where we have locations where we have mechanics. Some of the locations aren't big enough where we use purchase cards to take care. We go through the open market, through dealerships and things like that. But in the bigger sectors, we've got those logistics folks that are not just ordering parts for the vehicles, they're ordering stuff that you need, your masks, your gloves, your replacement handcuffs if you lose them, replacement batons, all that equipment and supplies and stuff that you need to do, that they need to do their everyday work, is also a group of other folks. In fact, we have a team at the LSC in El Paso, Texas. Their sole job is to go and get supplies. There's about 13 people working in a warehouse in El Paso, Texas. Their sole job is to go out and make sure all the sectors have all the PPE and all the supplies that they need, especially during the pandemic, to make sure that we have those kits out there for the use of all the employees.
And so that's the fleet, and just dabbles a little bit into the equipment that the men and women need out there, the facilities. The sheer number of facilities that belong to the United States Border Patrol. If you look at one sector, coming from RGV, the Rio Grande Valley sector, or Laredo sector, or Holton sector, the places that I've been, each sector has multiple stations, and each station has its own facility or facilities. There's a sector headquarters. There are checkpoints. All of those have to be maintained and up to standard as well, and you have a specific department that does nothing but that, to include new construction.
That is correct. We have a facilities division. We've expanded it. We had 8 folks in that division. We also have, just to touch a little bit, I have sprinkled in 1896 employees into all of these divisions, so that when we have these folks, and the facilities is a perfect example, it's a division mainly made up of engineers, because that's what we need to do that type of work. But the one thing about an engineer knows everything there is to know about building a building, but they know nothing about what's needed to build a building for Border Patrol use. So that's why we have green shirts or Border Patrol agents sprinkled in there. So when they're making these designs for a station, say at Laredo sector, we're going to build a station in Laredo, we have a green shirt to say, hey, this is a great concept, but we need more locker room facilities, and we need more locker room facilities because an agent has a gear bag, and in that gear bag they've got MVGs and they've got binos, and if they happen to be a canine, then they've got additional things, or if they happen to be a Marine agent, they got another set of equipment that needs to go with the PFDs. They need these locker room spaces so that they can house that. So that's the one thing that our green shirts do, is they keep people in line to make sure that we're designing a facility, or we're getting a vehicle, or the piece of equipment that we have has the best interest of the agent in mind.
And so when you say, of course, 1896, that's a job series for a Border Patrol agent. So it's a GS 1896, and then whatever their pay grade is.
Correct.
So you're talking about a collaborative effort between the men and women in the uniform and the subject matter experts that actually make some of these things happen, that actually go into the construction, the procurement of facilities, and keeping them, maintaining them up and running. You go to a sector or station, you have people that are also hired, in addition to the mechanics, that do nothing but maintain these facilities, do repairs.
Correct. That's actually all the repairs and things that are done depending on the facility, whether it's a government-owned facility or whether it's a leased facility. So if it's a leased facility, that would go to CBP Real, which is the real estate leasing agency. And if it's a leased facility, if something needs to be done, that falls to the responsibility of the actual lessor, the person who we're actually leasing the vehicle for. If it's a GSA-owned building, and some of our vehicles are some of our facilities are GSA-owned, it is a responsibility for GSA to take care and maintain those. Like headquarters, U.S. Border Patrol headquarters at the Ronald Reagan building is a GSA facility. So if something happens with the facility at headquarters, GSA is responsible for it. If it's a facility that we own, then BPAM, that's the Border Patrol, the facilities division at headquarters, they come in and they find the funding to fix those. So it depends on how the facility is laid out.
And no matter what department we're talking about or what area we're talking about, what I'm hearing is there's a lot of collaboration and work with partners and stakeholders in other agencies of the government and probably within the community as well.
Absolutely. On the MROD side, there is interaction both internal and externally, building coalitions and building those relationships within the other components of CBP as well as other government entities. It has to be done. Without it, there's no way we can get the job done.
So let's talk about the budget for a second, because this is something once you get into the government and you realize it is a never-ending process of planning and adjusting and when do you actually get the funds that drop and how can you spend them and how soon do you have to spend it. There's also another segment of the professional staff that do nothing. They're dedicated to nothing but working with the budgets out there for the U.S. Border Patrol and all the sectors and stations.
We actually have on the other side of the portfolio, the finance division, their sole responsibility is to track all of the money that we have come in. There are 4 line of business within CBP, and the Border Patrol is listed in line of business 1 with Office of Field Operations, and those things are just how everything comes together. Money comes into CBP, and we fund those things in line of business 1 on a corporation level to do the things that we need to do. We have a group of finance folks that's all they handle is that line of business 1 funds and what we need to spend and take care of the things that we need to take care of in that line of business 1. On the other side, on the programming side, what those folks do is those are what's called the RAP process. What they're doing is they're doing the planning for budget 2 to 5 years out. So the facilities handle the 1 year and 2 year money, depending on how it's given to us from Congress, and the programming side handles the 3 to 5 years out and planning how we get the money for future projects.
So that's a great point. You're talking about a lot of this planning is taking place years in advance, and so it kind of makes it a little bit more understandable whenever we have something that's needed, and it's not as easy as just writing a check. Well, you have $100 in your bank account. Just go ahead and write the check and buy it now. No, that money may already be earmarked for something else. You may have to go through that RAP process like you talk about, and you may have to plan it for a couple years absent any exigent circumstances. That happens a lot with the budget.
It does, and it actually goes a little bit deeper, color of money, bucket of money. So when we get money appropriated to us from the appropriators, it comes in basically the best way, a color of money, whether it be equipment money or travel money or facilities money. And as an agency, we have to spend that money within that bucket. If we have money that's been allocated to us in facilities and it's been given to us by the appropriators, basically the Congress says that this is how we're going to spend the money. We have to go back to Congress and say, you gave us, we have this money here, we want to spend it over here and reappropriate it, which is always a dangerous business because...
And they may say no.
They may take it back. Not only do they say no, but they could say, hey, if you don't need it here, then you don't need it at all, and they take it and spend it somewhere else. So we have to look at how we planned it and also the color or the bucket of money that it was dumped into.
So just so I can put it into Okie speak, so we may get a budget of $1 million. This is just throwing a number out there. And they say, okay, we need something that costs $200,000. On the face of it, that seems like an easy enough task. But what you're saying is, of that $1 million, $500,000 of it has to be spent on facilities, and $300,000 of it has to be spent on equipment, and then $200,000 of it can be spent for. It may not be as easy. You may not actually have the $200,000 in the right bucket that you need to be able to spend on whatever it is you want.
That is correct. And if it's not in that, if the money isn't allocated in that bucket of money, there's some discretionary funds that the chief and the commissioner have. But if it's not within that bucket of money, we need to move it from one bucket to the next. Depending on the level of appropriations, it might require us to go back and ask permission.
And this planning process for these budgets, it's ongoing pretty much all the time.
It is on. Yeah, right now we're beginning the RAP process we're in 2021. We're beginning the RAP process now for 2026 money.
So 5 years in advance.
5 years out. We are in the planning process 5 years out.
So when people talk about how difficult it is to start to turn that ship, the aircraft carrier, in a different direction, that's the type of thing we're talking about where it doesn't just happen like that.
It does, yeah, because you have year of execution money and then year of planning money.
All right. So moving on from the budget, now you've got the human resource side. You have the people that do nothing but deal with benefits, deal with insurance, deal with retirement and pensions. With the hiring, training and recruitment is a big piece of what you do as well. Actually filling the positions that we need to get out there in the field.
So dealing on the manpower side is actually split into two divisions. And the stuff that we were talking about earlier when we start talking about pay, benefits, retirements, OWCP, those type of things, all that stuff is actually handled out of the workforce management division. On the manpower side, on my side, which is recruitment and training, I handle all the recruitment and pre-employment actions for agents. So we do all the recruiting things. We go out and do some different things to go out and try to get new agents. We also have the Explorers program that falls into the pre-employment, and also pre-employment activities, which is all of the, there are two things that fall into that. Hiring boards. So we handle all the hiring boards for Border Patrol hires. And the other one is the medical review boards. So whenever an applicant comes in, and some people that maybe listen, that have gone through this, they might have a good one is those that have done the cataract, or not the cataract, but the
LASIK.
LASIK. That puts you in to have to go through a board. So what happens is when you go through that process and you give all the medical stuff, the hiring center, which is another CBP entity, sends that information to a team that I have at headquarters, and we establish a board, and that board is made up of Border Patrol agents. I think you might have even sat on that review board
Probably.
at one point. I know I've sat on it, and it's a group of leaders that go through and review the packet to determine whether or not that applicant can do the job as a Border Patrol agent. And we either say yes or no, and it goes back, and then we handle all those medical review boards that go along with it.
So, Reggie, you and I have known each other for quite a while now.
Yes, sir.
You're a Border Patrol agent. We graduated almost the exact same time from the academy.
We certainly
within two classes.
Yeah, we ran the same dirt.
So, how long did it take you get in this position before you started getting a grasp or a handle on this extremely complex area that not many people think about?
Oh, yeah. So it's funny you asked that, because this was a leap for me, being working for you as a PIC up in Grand Forks when you're my A chief. I thought I had a great grasp of that. And when I came to headquarters, I went to ops and did all that stuff in ops. And after I left ops, I went to Congressional Affairs and spent some time doing some fellow stuff. When I came out of Congressional Affairs, it was a great leader said, "Hey, we need to diversify your resume. We need to get you to do something that's outside of your realm." So they sent me to HRM, and I was assigned to the National Frontline Recruiting Command, which, being an older guy, kind of stuck in his ways, now having to deal with the pro staff side of things was way outside of my comfort zone. I came from there. I was able to come back to headquarters and picked up the associate chief over recruitment and training at that time, and then got the opportunity to step into the deputy level. And I'll be honest with you, I've been doing the deputy since December of 2018. And the stuff that I manage on my side, all the agent support, that stuff just kind of comes natural. But the finance side, I'm just now, if you were to ask me this question a year ago, I would have struggled to be able to answer it.
And that makes sense.
I did now. It's heavy lift.
And talking about diversifying a person's resume or credentials, the higher that we move up, it kind of behooves us to have at least a baseline understanding of everything in the portfolio. And that kind of is what's serving you well whenever you move on and take on a command position out in the field again. But all of us have to kind of go through that, or else we're going to have that struggle or that fear, because it's not something that we have grown up doing. It's not something that we've given a lot of thought to. We certainly want our paycheck to be there every 2 weeks, and we certainly want to be able to use our medical insurance every time we need it. And we want to know that when we retire, we're going to get our pension. And we want to know that we're going to have vehicles to drive, vehicles that are safe and that function. We're going to want facilities to be able to do our work from. We don't think too much about what it takes to get them and maintain them. And that's the piece that really is super critical. And it just drives home the point that these men and women under your purview and out at the sectors, the professional staff, how important and valuable they are to us and our mission.
Well, yeah, I'll be honest with you. I mean, stepping in and doing this stuff, and it we can all learn, right? But the subject matter experts, when it comes to doing the stuff that we do, if I didn't have a pro staff that was a financial, Bruce Lindsay and Eric Goldman, those guys are savants when it comes to budget side of things. I can make a decision. I want to go spend this. And I can do that. If I don't know the second, third, fourth order effects like they do, I'm going to get into trouble. So it's great having those folks that say, soft side facility is a perfect example. If I want to just take and spend this amount of money to build a soft side facility in a location, and I don't know that, hey, I can't pull the money because it's the wrong color of money, that's what those guys do. So it's easy for me to say this is what I want to do, but those guys are the ones that help me make the right decisions to get the right stuff to the field.
And so it kind of brings up 2 points. Number one, it takes more than just a law enforcement officer to be able to make this machine that is the United States Border Patrol function. It takes a level of complexity and subject matter expertise out there that is just immense and, again, doesn't get thought about enough. It also highlights the fact that there are so many more people to this green family than just those of us that wear this uniform. And that's the point I want to get to, is we need to make sure that we're always remembering the work that those folks do, and remember that they are a part of this family, and we couldn't do what we do without them.
But yeah, without a doubt, and I don't. We've got guys out there doing great things. We got Border Patrol agents out there that are working crazy hours, doing great things, and keeping this country safe and doing the stuff that we do. But for every 4, 5, 6, 10 Border Patrol agents out there, we've got a pro staff that's making sure that they're getting paid, that's making sure they have health benefits, that's making sure they've got a vehicle to drive, that's making sure that the vehicle is safe to drive, they're making sure that they've got a facility that they can go and do their stuff, and that's making sure they've got a computer to do their processing on. All of that stuff that's behind the scenes that people don't see, those folks are doing every single day. And without them, we wouldn't be able to function.
And as you're listing off all of the functions that they perform, in my mind, I'm thinking through all these faces that I've seen over the years at the different places that I've been, and every one of them have a smile on their face, and every one of them are doing the job, and you look at them and you come to depend on them because they're the go-to folks whenever you need something like that taken care of, from the mechanics that are you pull up and they're frustrated because you dinged it up again, or you got this thing going on again, but they get the vehicle back up and running.
It's funny you say that, because I'll just say a name, Nancy Nelson.
Yep.
In Grand Forks. And I say that because as a PAIC working for you at the station, one of the problems I had was I needed more space. And I needed more space because I had all this old, decrepit equipment that nobody was using. And it was Nancy Nelson and her team that helped me get through to excise that equipment to create the space so that my guys had the space to put up their dry suits for the Marine patrols, and had the stuff to put up there, because on the northern border they had to have snowmobile stuff. They needed those lockers and that space to store that. But it was all occupied by old, decrepit NVGs that nobody was using. And without Nancy Nelson, I couldn't have made that space available for the agents at the station.
And I bet you every single one of us probably have that person or those people in our mind when we start talking about our professional staff that do those jobs. Probably comes to mind, and you think to yourself, yeah, I haven't said thank you enough. I haven't go out there and tell them just how valuable they are to the border security mission. They have a very big part in keeping this country safe as well. They don't get all the accolades. They don't get the limelight or the spotlight, but they are just as happy whenever we succeed. They are just as proud when we succeed, and we should take a second and say thank you.
We should. We don't accomplish the mission without them. With all the work that's being done behind them, if agents are out there and have aliens and they're processing, and they need to purchase food that's not on a contract at a smaller station, it's somebody with a purchase card that goes and takes care of that for them. The work does not get done without them. Translation services is a perfect example. Without the folks in logistics doing the work that they did to get translation services up, we can't process in languages we don't speak. Without it, we're dead in the water. We're holding people for days on a time until we can get somebody to translate for them. And that's a pro staff person with a purchase card that sets up that contract, that's taking care of it.
And one of the other, I guess, for us would be a fun aspect of your job, and the things that you have purview over would be the specialty programs. You've got the Honor Guard, the Explorer program, the am I right? The
specialty programs on my side that fall. I've got chaplaincy, peer support, resiliency, Honor Guard. Within Honor Guard is pipes and drums. Some of the other cool stuff, firearms use of force. So I have all the body armor. So the Glocks, my team was instrumental with the LAC in developing, getting the Glock tested and getting the Glock selected. You should see some. I think you've already shot the new Corsafire. We're trying to get the new Corsafire out there to get some feedback on how that's done.
What did you think of that? Did you like that Corsafire?
You know what? You're talking. I'm biased, and I actually like the new Corsafire, and I'll get into that. I can go into now, or I can finish with the other stuff.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So we'll go into the all the other stuff with the firearms use of force. The new Corsafire, well, what I want people to understand about, in 1990, 97, 96, when we came in, everybody was carrying wheel guns. They went in and we were going to transition from wheel to semi-automatic. The 72-round Corsafire that we've been shooting since you and I came in 1997, and everybody else has out there been shooting, was a Corsafire that was not designed for anything other than the 92 DD Beretta. And it was a Corsafire that was designed to teach the skill sets in transitioning from shooting a revolver to a semi-automatic weapon. All the skill sets, the magazine changes, everything that was done was specific to the Beretta and the Beretta only. In the mid-2000s, we went away from the Beretta and went to the P2000. We didn't change our Corsafire. It was still a Corsafire that was developed for 8 skill sets in transitioning from a revolver to a semi-automatic. The new Corsafire is 50 rounds. And in this 50-round Corsafire, we are teaching 13 skill sets. And these are 13 skill sets that have been proven to be the skill sets needed are things that law enforcement officers are likely to encounter a deadly force encounter. So you're going to shoot, you're going to shoot 50 rounds or 22 rounds or less because you're only shooting 50 rounds. But you're going to get 13 skill sets in comparison to 9. More importantly, we're not shooting less rounds. We're actually shooting more rounds in the qualification because we've added in 150 rounds of advanced firearms training exercises. So when you go to qualify, you're not just going to shoot 72 rounds and leave and be done. You're going to shoot 200 rounds, 50 of which are going to be the new Corsafire. And it's a new Corsafire that regardless of whether we change weapons or not, if we go to another weapon, this Corsafire is addressed to address those skill sets that are likely to encounter a deadly force encounter, thus making you more prepared for a deadly force encounter, more importantly, making you more prepared to speak to that if you ever get called to testify on the stuff that we're teaching you.
So I'll tell you just from my personal opinion is I liked it. I thought it was good. I felt like I was exercising more skills in that Corsafire than I did in the one before. It didn't feel like I was shooting less than the 72-round Corsafire. So I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of our new weapons platform as well. Mm-hmm. I like to see us evolve and progress and make sure we have the latest and greatest out there for the agents. I liked it, and I'm curious to see where it goes from here. But we're finally starting to get on board with everybody getting the Glock, whichever one they choose, and with the advances in technology of the rounds now, and we're able to carry more, which is
I've got a question for you, and then we'll go back to the Glock. What do you think about the concept of starting at 25 and moving closer?
So it was different. It was very different, and I'll tell you. So
I'll tell you why we did that when you speak.
Well, one of the things for us, so when we used to do it in reverse and start off at the 1.5, the further back you go, there's almost a mind game that you get played that it's harder and harder to aim in. Whereas if you start out at the most difficult and you're advancing in on the target, is basically I think what the thought process is. It seems to become easier and easier and easier to be on target. But I agreed with the concept behind it. And at the end of the day, we ought to be ready to shoot in any conditions and whatever gets thrown at us. And so, it's a change, but so does our environment.
Yeah, we wanted to get into the concept that if you're in a deadly force encounter, you actually have to use your weapon. And then we wanted to be comfortable with advancing, number one. So you start out farther from a safe distance and then start in. But more importantly, like you had said, that mind game is actually fatigue. So would you rather be fresher shooting at 25 or at 1.5? So we pushed it out to shoot fresh at 25, where when you get closer at 1.5, when that mental fatigue sets in, it's easier for you to maintain that sight picture because you were shooting bent elbow, right? And you're within 1.5 yards. It's easier to get a shot on target at that range when you're fatigued than it is at 25 yards.
It's just interesting to hear, again, how much thought in the process that goes into making these decisions. I think sometimes we don't think about that. We think, where did this come from? It's just out of the blue. It made it easier on somebody to go this way than that way. But when you hear the rationale and the thought process behind it, even if you don't agree with it, you can at least get behind it and say, okay, well, they were driving towards a direction. They had some goal in mind.
Right. And now I want to talk about the Glock, right? Because there's which you go with, Glock 19 or Glock 47?
47.
And everyone, and when I say Glock 47, we probably have similar reasons. Most people think, I'm going to go Glock 19 because it's a smaller gun. You'd be wrong. It's not a smaller gun. The frame on the Glock 19 is identical to the frame on the Glock 47. It is the same distance around. So if you think you're getting a 19 because you've got smaller hands, you'd be wrong. It's the same distance around. The only difference is the slide. And if you're a poor shooter, you should be thinking Glock 47. And the reason why is that extra half an inch gives you a better picture sight alignment. And at 25 yards, 2 inches, a half an inch will bring you an inch and a half.
Interesting.
So, yeah, because it's a longer. Think about rifle, right? Historically, you tend to shoot better with a rifle because of that long sight picture from the rear sight to the front sight. Because it's easier to line up and get. The longer it is, the easier it is to line it up compared to 5.5 or 5. So if you're not a great shooter, I would suggest 47.
Oh, that's good advice.
I would suggest 47 because you're going to have an extra half an inch to give you a lighter sight picture. More importantly, 19-round magazine options are out there. More rounds. The 47 was specifically made for the United States.
So you're proving the point that you are an agent and not somebody that stays behind a desk all day. At least that's where you came from.
That's where I came from. I'm a certified firearm instructor. I mean, I've done that whole gamut. I was one of the plank owners, so to speak, in the baton OCB baton training. And I'm sure you spent time in McAllen. I think that I'm legendary when it comes to training. When it comes to firearms, our CBP, CSB, and OC training in McAllen back in the day. So wow. I don't come for this just because people are telling me it. I've lived it. I've experienced it. I helped go through the process of selecting the Glock. So there's a lot of things out there that go with it. So
and while we're on the topic, other interesting points that are under your purview, the honor guard, the pipes and drums, you also are a member of those.
I'm also a member of the Honor Guard. I'm also a member of the Pipe and Drums. I was a commander of that team for a couple of years. That's probably one of the highlights of my career because not many people can say, I'm a Border Patrol agent, but I also play on the pipes and drums. It was an absolute wonderful thing.
So that's something that is very unique. It identifies us when you see the Border Patrol pipes and drums out there, and it's and for the reasons that we use them, it really makes it special. A lot of people probably have some interest in that, or at least how it came to be. Let's talk about that a little bit. How did we get Border Patrol bagpipes and drums, and what does all of it mean? When you have the kilt, I know those kilts are special ordered. I know we have they're numbered. I know that the bagpipes, they only have a certain amount of them for the United States Border Patrol. Tell us about that. So
the pipe and drum team is actually, we've put a number of 35 people. So it's a national team. It's managed out of my office at headquarters. And you have to go through honor guard training to be a member of the pipe and drums training. Doesn't mean that you have to be an honor guard member first, but you have to complete and graduate the honor guard training to be a member of the pipe and drum team. I wish I could take credit for it, but there are great people out there, and I'll just throw out a couple of names: Brad Kirkpatrick, Cliff Gill, James Serrell. Those guys were instrumental in actually setting up pipes and drums at the time back in the when we first started doing honor guard stuff back in the late 90s. It was sort of ad hoc. Each sector kind of had their own thing, and we had these guys with with bagpipe background that say, hey, law enforcement, historically, bagpipes is long law enforcement. Goes back to the turn of the century when folks from Scotland would come over. The only jobs they could get were cops because they were considered low-paying jobs. So that's where those traditions and things come in. So they had that background and said, hey, we're law enforcement agents. We should have pipes and drums. And I think the first team actually started in Laredo, Texas. Maybe Del Rio. It was either Brad Kirkpatrick and James Serrell in Del Rio, Texas, or Cliff Gill and some other folks in Laredo. I think is where it started. And it was like the honor guard thing. It was kind of like the SOD stuff where we had the SRT teams and the SOG. It was one of those things where it was sort of ad hoc. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing. Uniforms were kind of Mod Podge and different. In McAllen, when I was on the team, we had gold ascots. And it was just, I think Laredo, they had white ascots. It was just this sort of, so we needed to find a way to standardize, kind of like they did with the SRT teams. So that's what we did. They brought the team together and they standardized and said, you know what, we're just going to have one team nationally because that would be the best way. They'd be spread out, and they deploy from there. So it started out that way, and probably in the early 2000s. I got on the team in 2009 while I was actually in Grand Forks. And I did it because Chief Schroeder at the time said, we need a bagpiper. Who wants to do it? And myself and Kevin Wiley and Alan Terry said, well, we'll do it.
So you didn't play the bagpipes
I did not play the bagpipes.
How did you learn?
I actually, between the team giving me some mentoring, I actually took private lessons. I drove to Thunder Bay once a week.
So you found somebody that played, and
I found somebody who played and took lessons.
And how long did it take you before you felt like you had a handle on it?
It didn't take me long at all. No. Before I could actually play anything other than scale and make it sound horrible, it probably took me a solid 8-9 months of lessons.
And practice. I'm sure you had to practice a lot.
Because you start off with a practice chanter, and once you step into the pipes, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes on with it. Before I could say that I was a really, really good piper, we had 2 levels. We had an intermediate level certification where you could do local events, and I did a lot in Grand Forks. And then we have the national level. So I started in 2009, and that was after a good solid 18 months of tutoring before I could get to that sector level, that intermediate level. But then it was probably about another 18 months before I could step up into the national level. I still struggle in some tunes now.
Sounds like you'd have to have an awful understanding spouse.
Well, it's a good thing when you're, my wife, she loves it now, but in the beginning it was pretty rough.
Not so much.
Pretty rough.
And it goes without saying, the Pipes and Drums, the Border Patrol Honor Guard, has received national accolades, won awards.
Absolutely.
And represents us well every single year at the police games and the police week up in Washington, Washington D.C.
Our honor guard folks, and even here at the academy, I'm not going to leave the honor guard folks at the academy. When we start talking about those teams, we've got them in just about every sector, if not every sector. And those teams that actually have the ability to compete in police week, the dedication that those guys put into to go and perform and actually compete at that level is amazing. We've had amazing teams between El Paso and El Centro and Tucson. I think even El Centro's jumped in there a couple of times. Those guys have been the front runners. They really, really do a good job. And to put together a team, first and foremost, in the environment that we have is one thing, right? To actually put together a team, to actually get the practice in the patrol environment around is another thing. So the fact that those guys can put together the series of drills that they do and do it to a level where they win year in and year out. Because I think it's been, I wish we had Frank in here. Frank could tell me right. I think we've won 8 out of the last 10 years.
And you can search on YouTube. You can see videos
Absolutely.
all over of the performances and the caliber that they're at. So if a person wants to get into Honor Guard or Pipes and Drums, what do they need to do?
The best way is in their local sector is to just reach out and look for those. They do the solicitations at the sector level. On the Pipes and Drums, we solicit Pipes and Drums on a national level every year. So they just need to look for that solicitation. Usually comes from me, asking for people to come on the board to Pipes and Drums. Pipes and Drums is a little bit different because you got to have a musical background. If you don't have a musical background, you got to have a willingness to dedicate the time to learn, because you just can't learn the notes. You actually have to learn how to read sheet music. And if you don't learn how to read sheet music, you're going to struggle and struggle and struggle.
And this is something, again, that these men and women, you do in addition to your duties as a Border Patrol agent.
The Honor Guard and the Pipes and Drums is a collateral duty.
So
they above and beyond.
A lot of extracurricular time, a lot of your own time that you're dedicating to practicing and taking lessons and everything. One of the really, really special things that the Honor Guard and the Pipes and Drums do for us doesn't deal with the competitions and the accolades. It's in our lowest moments where they really send a strong message. When you're talking about one of our fallen and honoring our fallen. And I can tell you, there's no time when those teams are appreciated more than when we're paying tribute or honoring somebody that's given their lives in the line of duty.
Not only that, but I can tell you, with the folks that I know, whether on the Pipes and Drums, on the Honor Guard, they would pass up the opportunity to compete to do a line of duty death funeral. I've done several of them myself, both on the Honor Guard side and on the Pipe and Drum side. When we start talking about honor and fallen. That is the biggest thing we can do. Every time you and I put on this uniform, we're representing not just that fallen agent, but that fallen agent's wife, spouse, children. And that's the one thing we need to remember. And that's one thing that every single one of those honor guard guys remember, is that I'm just not representing the Border Patrol. I'm representing that fallen agent and that fallen agent's mother, father, daughter, son, wife. So everything I do doesn't just affect me. It affects every single one of them.
So let's talk about the honors that are given to somebody by the honor guard in a line of duty death, especially because it kind of speaks to the lengths that these men and women go to pay that tribute. So if somebody dies in the line of duty, you have a silent watch.
We have a silent watch, yes.
And tell us what that is.
Silent watch is basically is a casket watch. Is where we post 2 agents on the side of the casket, and they're at the side of that casket from the time that agent, they're beside that agent from the time that he dies until the time that he's interned.
In full dress uniform.
Full dress uniform, standing at parade rest.
Watching over him.
Standing beside him. Right there next to him. It could be a 1-hour shift. It could be a 15-minute shift. It could be an 8-hour shift. And these folks, these guys stand there because they're there for that agent, that agent's family, to stand watch until he's interned.
And then during the actual ceremony, we're talking about the things that people know about, the flag draped coffin, the 21-gun salute. The rifle team will do that as well. The actual carrying of the casket a lot. All the ceremonies that go into that, the horseless or the riderless horse, that's the playing of taps, the amazing grace by the bagpipes. All of this must be executed in a flawless fashion.
Oh yeah. And then there's also the lone piper, right? So as wherever the casket goes, we try to put a piper out in front, so guiding the casket wherever it goes. We call that the lone piper, or usually it's a team. They nobody likes to be on the pipe and drums. Those guys don't like to be soloed out. They like the bigger sound. They want the whole band to be there. They all want that honor. So wherever the casket goes, where he's moving from the funeral home to the burial site, that's why you'll see those guys bringing in, whether it's a caisson or whatever. There's that side of it. You've got the 21-gun salute team that does the 21-gun salute. We have our flag folding team. Usually we try to do 6 people for line of duty death. It's a better fold. We can do this. Some of those guys out there can do it with 2, but we want 6 people out there. We've got the commander of agents and all that stuff that goes into. That's why you also hear at the very end, once it's all done, you hear that lone piper walking off and doing that sound that goes off. It's pretty intense. The
amount of rehearsal that goes into it leading up. You don't just show up at the ceremony and execute. You're training and rehearsing it days in advance.
Yeah, not only and that's the other thing too, right? Because again, remember our pipe and drum team. If it's an agent that dies in Laredo has a pretty substantial team. But if it's an agent that dies in Grand Forks has a substantial team, but they're spread out over 800 miles. So it's not like they can get together and practice like they can in Laredo when all the stations are within a 30-mile range or a 40-mile range. Pipes and drums is the same. Those guys are spread out, so they practice through Zoom, through Skype, through all that type of stuff. But the level that they are at, for them to show up and within a day of practice be fine-tuned, that's the level of expertise that those guys are at.
And only because it's people that have a passion for it and they take it serious. It's something that they are driven to excel at.
You have to be. If you're not committed to learning the techniques, whether it's pipe and drums or honor guard, if you're not willing to learn the techniques of holding the rifle and doing that type of stuff, don't bother. It takes a level of commitment, because that commitment's going to come at the worst time. It's absolutely going to come at the worst time. And I'll just tell a story about me. I don't know if you remember. I was actually doing training in San Antonio, and we had that big rain in Grand Marais. My house flooded. And I come back, and we had a line of duty death. I had to tell my wife, babe, you've got to deal with a flooded house. I've got to go to Botano to do a line of duty death.
And I'm sure she understood.
Well, let's go with that. Let's go with that. Yeah. So those are they come at good times, they come at bad times. You just have to be ready to step up and go and do it. And you have to be ready to perform when you get there, because every mistake you make, that wife, that husband, that child, that mother, that father, they hear it.
It's a lot of pressure.
That's what they hear. So
Yeah, I've been in awe of all of you guys. I've seen you play in happy times. I've seen you play in lowest of lows. You know, you, Frank, Myrna, Joyce. The list goes on and on and on of folks that over the years, and you never know that about people that you work with until you see, and it adds a level of depth to how you hold that person. And it's impressive, and I thank you for what you do, and everybody that gets on those teams. It's what it does for us, for our soul, when something like that happens. You can't measure, you can't put it into words, and I got to think that after you go through something like that, it's got to be draining. Are you exhausted when it's over?
Well, it depends, right? For me, it depends on where I'm at. The toughest part for me when I'm playing is not seeing the casket, right? So as long as I don't have view of the casket, I can usually do what I need to do. But when I see casket, that's when it gets rough. And I'll tell another story. It was actually Barry Peterson in our International Falls. Yeah. His son died drowned in the pool, and I actually went out on my own time and played for him. And I was great until I saw that child-side casket come out. So it's not related to Border Patrol, but that's really what I have to remember that I'm there for the family, and if whatever mistake I make, they're going to hear it. I don't want them to hear a mistake from me. So as long as I'm not in view of the casket, or as long as I can play and not be in view of the casket, because I'll need to see the casket when I need to do things. That's what it is for me. There's some other folks out there that they're just better at keeping their emotions in than I am. So.
Well, and so for anybody that's interested, we talked about the process. You have to be an agent. You have to be an agent off of probationary status.
You have to be an agent off of probationary status. You have to have the approval from your chain of command. You write a memo, and then they'll go through an interview process and things like that.
And the training itself, talk about Honor Guard for a second. We've touched lightly on it. We could spend hours talking about each one of these components and still not do them justice. How long is the training for the initial Honor Guard course?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. What are the things that they go over?
You're going to go through drill and dress. You're going to have dress inspections. You're going to have inspections every single day. You're going to learn how to drill. You're going to learn how to do rifle movements. You're going to learn how to do the right position and holding parade rest, because it's not just standing at parade rest. It's standing at parade rest in the identical way that your partner is on the other side of the casket. And it's not just holding the rifle. It's holding the rifle identical to the other 6 people in line with you. It's not just standing at the casket. It's knowing, all right, if I'm position 1, I have to do this, or if I'm position 3, I have to do this, and going into those right positions. So there's a lot of dress, deportment, and drill in it. So
it's an amazing thing to talk about and to learn. I learn something new every time I talk to one of you guys. It's something I never did, but I've always stood in awe of everybody that did. And so obviously I know we're always looking for folks that want to step up and be members of these teams. So if you're listening and it's something that calls to you, please seek it out and represent the U.S. Border Patrol in a way that very few people out there do, and do so well. And if you want to check out some of the work that our Honor Guard and Pipes and Drums do, go to YouTube, and all you have to do is type in Border Patrol Pipes and Drums or Border Patrol Honor Guard, and the images speak for themselves. It's absolutely amazing. The same thing goes with the professional staff. These men and women that many of them are from the retired military or law enforcement backgrounds, and they're coming in to continue their service. Mm-hmm. And that's they have a subject matter expertise based on years and years and years of experience, and they continue to serve in that capacity as well.
Yeah, we have pro staff that are peer support chaplains, resiliency folks. So those folks, that's collateral duty as well, to be a chaplain and do that peer support. We have training for that. We have both uniform, Border Patrol agents, and pro staff. So those folks, they serve as well in that same fashion. It's the same. I would say the same thing. If your heart pulls to be a chaplain, you research out, see when they're looking for chaplains. If your heart pulls to be there to help agents through or employees through bad times, whatever they are, whether it be floods, because our peer support teams, those guys are dealing with the floods in Louisiana, the floods in Florida, the floods in Puerto Rico, whether it's death in the family, that's what those folks do. So if that's something that pulls at your heart, you need to jump in and provide a service, because we need them.
And it's a good example of how the Border Patrol takes care of its own family, and because we have our own that step up and do these collateral duties, these jobs, in addition to their day jobs. They don a cape of a peer support or a chaplain, and they get out there in times of need above and beyond the call of duty. It also reemphasizes something I say all the time. If you get bored in the United States Border Patrol, you're simply not trying, because there's something out there for everybody, and your portfolio just underscores that, whether it's chaplain, peer support, recruiter, honor guard, pipe and drums, professional staff, in any of the wide array of areas in that professional staff. Good Lord.
We haven't even touched on laptops, iPhones, NVGs, FLIR, binos, Leathermans, all that type of stuff. Circuits, I handle all the circuits. I mean, there's so much stuff out there that goes along with. I mean, without circuits, which is the T1 lines, without that, we're not doing the show without a T1 line into this facility.
So, Rich, you're a retired Navy man, a retired chief.
Yes, sir.
Chief from the Navy, and you have been in the Border Patrol going on 25 years. I know that because, again, 2 classes apart. What's been your highlight? What's been the best thing that you look back on in all of that?
I would say Marine patrols, back doing the Marine stuff on the Rio back in McAllen. It was, we started that unit up, and I spent the better part of 3 years of my 6 years in McAllen running bass boats up and down the river. If I wasn't running bass boats, I was doing training. And I just enjoyed that so much, whether it was 20 degrees at night in January or 110 degrees in July. The work was just nonstop. It was always great stuff up there. There was a lot of chance we interdicted smuggling traffic, whether it was narcotics or alien traffic, Europa, chicken, take your pick. It was just a great time. I just look back at all the stuff that I had that was the best time, because it was really, really, it was a great unit to work on, and it was always something new every single day.
And you got in on the boats up in the Grand Forks sector as well.
Also, yeah. So being trained was actually easy to go up there, and different type of patrol, right? Went from river to Great Lake, a little bit different. I mean, Lake Superior is a big lake during the winter.
A little bit of snow, but it's one thing being on the Rio Grande River dealing with jet ski wakes, and it's another thing being on Lake Superior and dealing with 3 and 4 foot swells. So, yeah. So you got the men and women, many of whom are probably going through the academy right now or going to be in short order. Any message for them about what to expect or how to approach this job?
Coming from a police department to this job was really not what I expected. And I actually like telling the story, because I was a Denver cop for 7 years before I came here. And I was just I wanted to get into federal law enforcement. And the door sort of opened for me. And, back then you never know, it was going to be 6 months or 18 months. You never knew how long it was to take to get hired. I got this job with the expectation I was only going to be here for 3 to 5 years, because I had my sights fully set on pick your 3-letter acronym, pick it. Because being from Denver, Colorado, that was my goal, was to get back to Denver, Colorado doing federal work. So that's what I was prepared, was just to come in and do what I needed to do. But once I got to the Border Patrol Academy and I started realizing the amount of training that I was going to, and I went through at 26. I wished I'd have went through at 19. It would have been a little bit easier at 19 than it was at 26, because I bounced boot camp to this. And then I started realizing, I'd been to a police academy at 21, and doing this, the Border Patrol Academy was so much harder.
Was it?
It was just so much harder. Just physically, it wasn't just physically tough. It was mentally tough. And this is coming from a guy that took 2.5 years of Spanish in college and 3 years of Spanish in high school.
I was going to ask about that. So you had some base knowledge of Spanish.
I had 5 years of formal training in Spanish. 5 weeks. We had covered everything I learned at both a high school level and at a college level. With just when we started getting into subjective and all that type of stuff. And I was a group 2 guy. So, I don't know if they're still grouped in groups 1, but back then we were groups 1 through 6. You didn't want to be an Anglo in Group 6 because you were going to struggle. I was an Anglo in Group 2. So I was with Nativas. I don't know where you sat, but
I was in Group 4. I'm an Okie from Muskogee, so I was
a Group 2 guy. They lumped me in Group. I was actually hoping for Group 3, but they lumped me in the Group 2. So, but in 5 weeks we had covered. So for me, the struggle was the Spanish side. Even though I could conjugate and remember the verbs, that was and it wasn't just the conjugation and the classroom. It was the practical exercises, putting it into actual use, because in the police department you have to worry about stop. It's a completely different realm when you start dealing on this side. So that would be the thing. Be prepared to be challenged. If you're physically fit, and I was in pretty good shape back then, I wasn't prepared for the mental strain that I thought I was gonna breeze right through, and I didn't. I actually had to buckle down. I had to study and
rely on your classmates.
I had to rely on my classmates, and that was a good thing, right? Being the police and things like that, the law came a little bit easier to me. Luckily enough, my roommate at the time was a native speaker, and where he struggled in law, I could help him with law, and where I needed help on the Spanish side, he could help me on the Spanish side.
It's an all too common story you hear very often. Number one, that somebody comes in and looks at the Border Patrol as a stepping stone and then finds home and never leaves. That's happened to so many people throughout the years. The other is, when you come to an academy like this, especially the U.S. Border Patrol Academy, you are going to find things that challenge you. Everybody will have that test or tests that push your ability to adapt and be resilient. You have to rely on your classmates. You have to buckle down and push through and be able to work hard and persevere. That's why not everybody makes it.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes beyond that, right? Because once you graduating the academy is only step one. Step two is getting to the field and getting through. At that time, it was the 6.5 and the 10, but now it's the FTO status. And without Norberto Gonzalez and Hector Zamora, I'm telling you, Rich Fortunato would have struggled on the Spanish side in the field. So you gotta make sure that these guys that you meet in the academy, they're going to be there side by side when you're in the field, and you're trying to apply everything and learn sensor lists and learn locations and all that type of stuff, because they're just going to get thrown at you again. So it's those relationships that you're going to build in the academy are going to be important when you get to the field, because when you get to the field, it's going to be your classmates that are going to help you to get through it. Everything will pass. Everything, you're going to get challenges, but this too shall pass. And I look at it now, 25 years. I mean, I look back at the day and I say, here I'm at McAllen Station, and I'd be happy to be a GS7, right? I'd be happy to be a GS12 supervisor, be a supervisor. And now, you look where we're at, you're like, wow.
Never saw it coming.
Never saw it coming.
Yeah.
Never. If you asked me in 1998 if I thought I was going to be the deputy director chief of MROD, I was.
What's that?
I'm hoping to be a GS11 line agent running boats on the Rio.
So you still keep in touch with your classmates?
I do with some of them. Anniversary year comes around. It's really just my class. We started out common story. We started out about 48, graduated about 32. My class was actually split between McAllen sector and Laredo sector. So you probably remember Durkee and those kind of guys. Those are all my classmates in Laredo. So it was really a smaller group. Barry Songer's retired now. Wade Strum's still down in.
And of course, McAllen sector is now the Rio Grande Valley sector.
Rio Grande Valley sector. I apologize. Yeah, changed the name.
Nope.
So,
do you remember your class chant?
Oh, our motto?
Yep.
On the prowl, on the trail, 327 will not fail.
I'm telling you, everybody remembers it. 25 years, I bet you still have it, and you still wake up dreaming about it.
Yeah. I still remember my PT instructors.
Yeah, and they left a lasting impression on you, I'm sure.
Yes, they sure did.
As they always do.
They're both retired, Tom Thawer and John Stebline, two beasts of men.
Rich, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for being on here with us and sharing your stories today.
Thank you. It was a great opportunity. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for another episode of What's Important Now. We'll talk again soon. Until then, stay safe out there and honor first.